Memoir is born of many journeys. Hi, I'm Diana Page Jordan.
You may wonder, which of these stories should I write? I'm Avena Ward.
For some, it could begin as the autobiography you create in the wisdom courses. For others, memoir could spring from a poignant event in your life or through the experiences you've gleaned in your career.
For the two of us, there are two distinct paths. One of us is beginning to tell her story. The other, well, we'll let Diana begin.
Thanks, Avena. I saved my first full manuscript on 11/11/11. Since then, I revised it significantly after a series of beta readers. At least a dozen of them went through my memoir and gave me feedback. It wasn't always going to be a memoir, though.
Oh, tell us about that.
Well, as a radio and TV news anchor and reporter, I created a side hustle interviewing authors for BarnesandNoble.com, XM, and I had a daily show called Between the Lines on the AP Radio Network's 800 radio stations. At the same time, serendipitously, I was invited into a writing group that had been going for about 2 decades by Chuck Palahniuk, who wrote Fight Club, and who, by the way, is a Landmark graduate. Cheryl Strayed wrote her book Wild in our group. And another one of the New York Times bestselling authors, Chelsea Kane, challenged me one day. I was writing a book about all the authors I'd interviewed and what I'd learned from them. So I'd write a few pages, I'd stick a half a dozen questions at the end of each chapter, and finally one night at our weekly meeting, Chelsea says to me, "Diana, write the freaking memoir." And that's how my new chapter of memoir writing began. How about you, Avena? How did you begin writing your memoir?
I began my memoir with the idea of inspiring others to take on inequity in our society and our world in whatever way they're called. When I retired from ministry, I began writing about my family, inspired by my autobiography from Wisdom. Then last year at the Conference for Global Transformation, I got really excited about it. I was inspired in a workshop when I told a snippet of my story to someone from across the planet, and they were inspired to share something from their family story. And that made me realize that human beings everywhere want to tell their stories, and they want to make the world a more inclusive place. While at first I thought much of my story wasn't really very interesting or inspiring, and some of the conversations definitely needed an upgrade, I found that being open and vulnerable may in fact be the most inspiring thing.
And for me, a decade or so ago, being vulnerable really frightened me. I only did the forum 4 years ago, and back then, I had a New York City literary agent who took my memoir to publishers. They loved the writing, she told me, but they couldn't handle the idea of a little girl being sexually traumatized. But there was one thing that turned out to be inspiring.
What was that?
Well, when I was 7 years old, I'll tell it to you this way. I'm in my best friend's backyard and it's summertime, and I'm wearing a tube, like the 3 tubes of the swimming pool stacked. And my friend's mother says, "We're going in the house. Don't go in the pool." So as soon as her back was turned, I jump in the pool. My tube gets stuck between the tubes of the pool, upside down. I'm underwater. I'm drowning. I go up and out of my body. It's a near-death experience. And I say to the angels, "Why are all these terrible things happening?" And they say, "Because someday you'll write a book to help other little girls." And poof, the tubes shift and I pop up out from underwater. I wrote my memoir to give back, to empower people who don't have a voice because of the trauma they experienced as kids.
Yes, that's great. So when we write a memoir, we can really see that it's a way of inventing a new future. We take our experience out of monologue and enter into a dialogue with a reader. The past can be transformed and futures altered.
That's so true. What I discovered in all these different iterations of my memoir, I healed. I became more. I took the victim out of the story and I rewrote my story, truth.
I'm aware that if I'm just writing from the victim standpoint, it's not really authentic, is it? So if someone wanted to write a memoir, where would they begin?
Well, there's a story inside that wants to be written. It hammers at you until finally you say, okay, I'll write you. So a decade or so ago, when I began writing my memoir, whatever chapter or whatever incident came to mind first, I would just write it. And then I refined it and refined it like about 20 times now.
I can relate to that. That's how I began.
If I were writing my memoir right now, I would write the structure first. I would create an outline right away.
What else do you recommend?
Well, Chuck Palahniuk used to call one of the techniques on the body. It means using all your senses when you write. So using all the senses help make a story not just an autobiography, but a memoir, because then people can get into your being by experiencing those same senses. So that's part of it too.
Well, if a memoir is a conversation that's being had with the reader, then you have to write a lot of dialogue also, right? It helps readers to enter into the story. And by sharing our stories, we release the past and bring it out into the light. In sharing those stories, we invite the community to participate in our transformation and the transformation that we've actually experienced.
Yes, and you can write a memoir from any angle. If you're a mom, if you're a movie star, if you sell hot dogs on the corner, it doesn't matter. We write our memoirs and thereby explore every story along the way. We celebrate our lives, share the beauty we discover, release ourselves from pain, and we create lives of joy which resonate with our readers.
What is calling you to be written?
We are heroes on a journey.
Thank you for joining us.